Hello, everyone. It's me, Maximus. I'm here with Moves Like Jagger and Virtual Spectre for for this evening's Tome of Knowledge. I don't know where my head was going, but it was just like we're going there.
It worked. It works.
Yeah, I mean, it worked about as well as it could for a day like today. Hope you're all having a fantastic evening. If you don't know, Tome of Knowledge is our show where we talk about anything and everything D&D, just based on whatever we feel like. In today's episode, we're gonna be talking about magic items. Ooh, shiny.
Yeah.
That's part of D&D, right? Loot.
The shiniest part, yeah.
Yeah, people love loot. That's the reason you go adventuring.
I mean, yeah, that literally was in the first edition of D&D. It was just to get your loot.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that in early D&D, your experience was tied to how much gold you got as well. So the more gold that you earned, the more experience you had.
So
Some
if you spent that gold, would you lose experience?
I don't know. I wasn't gonna go that deep into it. I haven't played
Oh,
it.
okay.
I just remember reading about it. Yeah, and we're all glad that VS is in it again.
Yeah, I was so frustrating last a few days ago.
Mm-hmm.
ISPs, you can't do
Just can't
anything about
win.
it.
Yeah, just can't win at all.
I wanted to play so bad though. I just kept like checking the internet like every 5 minutes leading up to like the last half hour before the stream started, just to see like did they restore it? They restore it,
Mm-hmm.
and it
That
wasn't even
sucks,
that.
man.
Damn.
They pulled the
Yeah, we
rug
missed
out
the
from under
money.
you.
Yeah,
But you're here now.
I'm
Home
here
and
And that's
now.
what's important. And I will say
Mhm.
too, I'll invite everyone in the audience that's watching live. If you have any questions about magic items, please put them in the chat because we're talking about everything magic items today.
Yeah, because I'm one of you that doesn't know much about them.
Yeah.
I think I had 1 or 2 in our first campaign.
You had more than that.
Yeah, because I ended up buying one. So, like 3 or 4 maybe.
You
Well,
had
you
a
had the
sword
boots
and a
that kept you
belt,
warm.
the
That's,
boots.
yeah.
Yeah, 2 different boots. Right.
I just had the
So you had
wintertime boots or the cold boots.
didn't
And
you
you
have
had
the
your
springing and striding boots before we got you the warm boots? Oh.
I don't think that those were given out in campaign 1. In other
Hmm.
words, but you did have
I
the
bought a ring of
belt.
protection. I had one made.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You had the
Oh, the
special
belt.
belt too.
Yes.
Mhm.
I got the belt so early on that I completely forgot because I never took it off, I don't think.
Mhm. Nor should you.
Some
Um,
Green Knight style.
yeah. Yeah. I love that movie. It's a great movie.
So good.
Anyway,
Anyways.
so I guess the topic of magic items is just like a vast, huge pool that we could dive into. I guess I'll just do my best to just jump in where I think we can jump in. We can just talk about it.
Mhm.
I will say that the rules about magic items specifically are in a couple different places. The meat and the potatoes, if you don't want to pay for anything, it's in the basic rules. It talks about it. So if you don't have the DMG or anything, you can get it from the basic rules. But most of the information is in the Dungeon Master's Guide. There's also additional information in Xanathar's Guide to Everything, the book they released after, which changes and enhances some things. And then pretty much, I think in almost every adventure book and a lot of the source books, there's new magic items in them because there's so many magic
Yeah.
items out there.
I think yeah, there's so many magical items that's to like mundane to like super crazy powerful magic stuff. Like you really don't need to make your own magic items unless you really want to.
Mhm.
Or if you want to like make something custom for your players that would help enhance their play style or emulate something that their theme is going for. But yeah, there's ridiculous amount. So many magic items. It's insane.
Yeah. I think one thing you kind of touched on, but there's an important sort of hierarchy of magic items. So they come in a couple of different flavors, I guess you could say, but there's a couple of tiers of magic item rarity. Actually, I think is what the book calls it. And it starts with common, then uncommon, then rare, very rare, and then legendary. And then there's another like tier that I think is kind of legendary, but the books call them like artifact items. But they're basically like legendary plus. Just depends on how you look at it and what book you're getting them from. So those are basically the tiers of magical items. Um, and I will say that the DMG and Xanathars give you some ranges of like how much an item is, like what its value is, kind of thing. Um, I personally think that those scales are a little skewed. Some of the items are not priced appropriately for what they are, but that's a good starting point anyway. There's a lot of third party material if you want to get down the nitty gritty of like how much a magic item should cost and stuff like that.
Yeah, Xanathar breaks everything down to the rarity and how many days it takes to craft for the
Mm-hmm.
rarity. It's just like overload. Like you don't need to get into the nitty gritty of how an item is crafted, like, especially if it's magical, unless you really, really want to. But usually, I
And
just ignore all that stuff.
I think it depends on your players too, because I've played with people that specifically like want to go and like and do like the monster hunter thing where they go and find, you know, like the pelt of some monster and get like items and make stuff with it. So it just depends on like what your characters want to do if you're the
Well,
one
yeah,
doling out
I think
magic
that
items and stuff.
that part is okay. Like if they specific like artificer, for example, if they want to like collect the materials themselves or go on a quest or having a quest to craft an epic item or whatever, I think that part okay. But like getting into the nitty gritty, like this is gonna take 3 months of in-game time for you to craft. Like we could just skip that part, you know?
Yeah.
I think for some reason this is a little off the path here, but I think for some reason players don't like downtime, and I don't know why. Because to me, if I'm making like a legendary item, yeah, it's gonna take a long time. You know, same thing like if the players like wanted to make a castle, yeah, it's gonna take a long time in game too. It just depends on like your play style. But I know you all in our games, like you very rarely took any downtime whatsoever. Maybe a week one time.
Yeah, I think I know for sure maybe one or two of us aren't super into that sort of
Yeah.
part of the D&D
I think all
experience.
of us don't want it.
Yeah.
I me personally, I don't mind either way. If people want to like if you have a character who's let's say like a wizard or something and you every time we have a long rest, you want to like do a little thing about how you're weaving an enchantment or you know leading us on an expedition to find like a rare crystal or something for your next spell. It's like I'm totally cool with that. Like if you want to get in a little bit of detail on like the making of something cool, like I'm on board. I'm here for the ride. We're all having fun, but I can totally see how that would be a little bit much for some types of players.
Hmm.
I think because we're streaming and live streaming that I don't know, maybe it's we're mentally tricking ourselves like, oh, viewers don't wanna watch this is boring stuff, right? It's kinda not that it's mundane, but it feels like for
Hmm.
viewers to be mundane. So maybe
Makes sense.
if we change our perspective on that and we're like, "Oh, no, let's try it," and then, like, especially, yeah, if we're on a quest to forge a relic or something. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
I noticed you all were mentioning like you mentioned artificer and mentioned wizard, like creating magic items and stuff like that. We're kind of jumping back and forth here, but I will say too that based on what Xanathar's had, it's only based on your Arcana skill. So if you're proficient in Arcana, you don't have to be a wizard. It could be anybody who
Yeah,
can make magic items.
anyone can craft as long as they have it. They don't have to be an arcane spellcaster to make stuff.
Yeah.
I want to address something, and Zeus is going to know my opinion to this because I saw it in the chat. And didn't mean to cut everybody off there, but this is something. This is one of my pet peeves about magic items. I'm gonna go off here. So Zeus says rarity is only half the equation. Minor and major makes a huge difference. So there are things that Xanathars brought up specifically, I believe. Xanathar's brought up the idea of minor and major magic items as opposed to rarity. And I think it was a decent system. So things like potions or whatever, or different, smaller things are minor, but other things of the same rarity and category could be major. I'm gonna find a specific example, so I'm just not talking like anecdotally here, but
Was
let's
this
see.
used alongside of rarity, or is this used as a whole
Yes,
different system than
it's
like?
used alongside it.
Okay,
So what they did is they basically took magic items and basically tiered them. It's based off of like the random magic item tables, like the A through F or whatever that's in Dungeon Master's Guide, as
Yeah.
well as Xanathar's. And it makes distinctions between them, um, of like which tier of items are this. But my pet peeve with minor and major magic items is that it says they exist in the Dungeon Master's Guide. The Dungeon Master's Guide, there's nothing about minor and major magic items. Xanathar's retroactively applies it to magic items in the DMG and items in Xanathar's. And to my knowledge, those terms never appear anywhere else ever again. So any magic item that was added to the game after Xanathar's, of which there are quite a few, aren't major or minor, and you have to just make your best guess as to where they are. And then my bigger pet peeve about that is if you use like their premier online tool, D&D Beyond, there is literally no way to tell if something is a minor or major magic item on that website unless you're looking in
Yeah.
the book specifically, of which
yeah,
if I was going to look in the book, I wouldn't use D&D Beyond.
yeah, because they only list it by rarity.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So
So
I think it's a good idea to have it, but I don't think that I think they introduced it as a good idea and then didn't follow through with it.
this is what Wizard needs to do now, like they did in 3.5, is because there's so many more spells and more items across a plethora of books. They need to come out with compendiums, like a magic item compendium and a magic spell compendium, where it lists everything in one book. That way, you don't have to reference 5 different books to find what you're looking for.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's something they need to do. I don't know how that is going to work moving forward with their next version of D&D, but
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I think it's a good idea, but after Xanathar's, there's tons of magic items that exist outside of Xanathar's and DMG that just you would
yeah,
never. There's no way to tell what sort of, if they're minor or major. Good
yeah,
idea
because they're
that
on a
doesn't
wiki
have
page.
the yeah, good idea that doesn't have the follow through with it and doesn't make it easy. So I don't personally use it. If you stick to just DMG and Xanathar's, great, you can. But
Yeah, there's plenty of stuff there, but yeah, like all the new books have like ton of stuff.
yeah, and that's the thing that I think we were talking about a little bit before stream is like every new adventure or new source book or something like is gonna add new magic items to them, so it gets really hard to keep track of. But anyway, that's just my small feeling about that. Great idea. Wish they would have stuck with it, because it makes it really hard to work with it if the tools aren't built around it to use it, I think.
Yeah, especially when you're like joining a new campaign or pre-existing campaign, but it tends to be higher level. So like, oh, you get 3 uncommon minors and then get a rare major and so forth. And every time I'm like, oh god, I don't know what these are. I always have to. I just go to a wiki and find out and just like, please find list of magic items with filters and tabs, please, because I don't want to try to Google this too hard.
Yeah, and and I mean that's the same thing that happened because I was playing in a game ran by Zeus, and that's where that happened. I was like, "How the fuck do I tell if this is minor or major?" Oh well, this came
Yeah,
in this
Zeus.
book, so there's no way. It's not Zeus's fault. He didn't write the damn books.
Do you feel
he,
like
he had a good
like
idea.
move? Do you feel like the best option for them going forward to be have like a whole book dedicated to just those things, or try to compile that into like the Dungeon Master's Guide or something? Or would that make the Dungeon Master's Guide just too big?
It would have to be a supplemental book because of how many adventure books are out and rules books and all this stuff keeps
Mm.
introducing more new stuff, especially that are like thematic to the what's it called? Adventure books. Yeah, they would just have to make a separate book that compiles everything and they can change all the erratas or whatever, and then just kind of fully organize like all this like the minor and major stuff from the DMG into this new compendium.
If if it were me going forward, if they wanted to use that system, don't base minor or major based on where it falls on the random like magic items table. Just literally put it on the item if it's minor or major. And that solves a lot of those problems, because that's the problem that
Yeah.
I have is just um look at the item and say, "Oh, this is minor. Oh, it goes here." That'd be a much easier way to do it.
I guess that can lead us into, for those that have DM'd games or that are currently DMing,
Mhm.
are awarding players magical items, can that be, is that a fun thing for DMs to do, or do you think some people just avoid it because it is such a pain to like look at where all the stuff is available and what they are, and to be able to award that in a campaign? Like how does, as a DM, do you go about uh, awarding players, if you even do that?
I know for me, I do two things. So I do a lot of random rolling for items too. Just rolling on a table, seeing what I get, and then throwing it in the loot that is going to drop in like an adventure or something like that, or like a quest. I think that's fun, because you definitely don't want to just give players like only specific things that they want, like that they're
Hmm.
asking for, because it really takes kind of the fun out of what's going to drop, what kind of loot are we going to get, how can we use this kind of stuff. So I like to do a lot of the random rolling, and then aside from that, I will cater specific items to players. So I do a little bit of both. um, I think it's fun to find the random stuff that you may not have thought that you would want to wanted, but you want to work with it because you have it. And then there's the items that are catered to this character because it could really, fit their character's needs. So I like doing both because I think there's rewards to both ways of thinking.
Yeah, I think that sounds like a reasonable way to do it. Like, do random like rolls for just kind of, since there is so many items out there that do any number of things, some of them are like meh, some of them are really good. To have like available random things and loot is, I think, fun for the players
Hmm.
when those things pop up. Because like, you're not gonna have a magic item every single time players loot, right?
Right. Yeah.
So, but then having more specific items as like a reward for a big story arc or something for a particular character, I think also makes sense as well. Like if the players have been on like a 10 session arc for like some characters, or multiple characters story arcs, and at the end of the road is like this amazing sword that the barbarian is just gonna like love, or
Hmm.
a staff that the cleric is just gonna fall in love with. I think that's pretty cool too.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think you also want to reward your players too, because the point of D&D is to grow and get stronger.
Hmm.
And then, it's always fun for players to get cool loot. And then, and you seeing them getting excited makes you happy, right? So,
Yeah. I guess that's kind of
um,
why I wanted to talk about this subject, because there seems to be a lot of like, with the amount of stuff available, it's over the course of a campaign, how do you avoid, I guess, power creep when players do get certain items? Because I feel like, you want to give players cool stuff, but at the same time, you don't. I can see you not wanting to snowball things to a certain point. Like, you don't want players to get too powerful by like level 6, where it makes it harder for you to plan the next 3 levels out?
Yeah, and that's a really good question because there is guidance of that specific thing in I know it's in Xanathar's for sure. That kind of gives you a guide of like, hey, here's how many items, like magic items um that a player or that a party can expect over like 1 to 20, like the whole campaign. So you just follow some of those guidelines. It'll tell you like, so many minor ones, so many major ones if you're using that system. Um and things like that. So that's helpful. Um and I kind of follow by that to some degree. I'll mix in like consumables with that because consumables will still count. There's also considerations based on like, are you running like a standard campaign? Are you running like a low magic campaign? You're running a high magic campaign, and those kind of skew those numbers in both directions too. Um, but for the power creep stuff, that's what I tend to follow more than anything. So
Gotcha.
Yeah, it's really up to the DM to decide how quickly, yeah, that power creep's going to ramp up because you're the one deciding to give these players these items, especially if like you're handcrafting items to cater to specific characters or they happen to roll like a 99 on the random loot and got something crazy powerful. But like I think there's ways where as the DM you can like yeah, they found this crazy powerful item, but maybe you level gate it, right? Or story gate it. So like eventually the item gets to reach its full potential as the players get higher level or something.
yeah, and it's really hard as a DM um to walk something back after you
Yes.
give it to your party.
Yeah.
It's much easier to err on the side of caution because that's not going to feel good for anybody. If I'm like, hey, VS, that thing I gave you, like, I got to take it away, man. It's way too powerful. You're like running over everything. Like, nobody wants that kind of stuff. I mean, you'd probably understand
Yeah.
because you're a reasonable person, but it's,
And
Over my character's cold dead body.
yeah, I would yeah, that's another thing is like how would that play out? Wouldn't you have to like have just a scenario in the game where it's just like, you know,
uh,
this item has to go or something bad happens or like you have to
that,
throw it in a pit of lava to save somebody or, you know.
I mean, that's one way to handle it for sure. Um, in that a specific scenario where if let's say I gave you something that's way more powerful than I thought it was, and it was kind of ruining the experience,
Mhm.
that's one of the times that I would handle the situation outside of the game. Because I think some situations are just better handled outside of it and just talking to people. So we'll play out the hypothetical here is you have some super badass dagger that just rolls over enemies and like no one's getting to really play because you're just killing everything. That'd be something I'd kind of say, hey, VS, like, I don't want to take your magic item away, but like people aren't having fun because of it, and it's my fault. Like, what can we do to make it better? Like, how can we tweak it to make it more in line? That's the kind of thing that I would do specifically.
Yeah.
But I do like your idea, Zeus, of having magic items that grow with a character, like what we had with Valken in the first campaign. Those
Mm.
are really fun, I think, too. It's something you don't want to do that all the time, but I think it's fun to sprinkle some of those into your campaign too.
Something
Yeah,
where like the properties
third
change like
Hmm.
at a certain point that does something new or something extra.
Unlock stuff, yeah.
Yeah, that is a pretty cool idea. What were you gonna say, moves?
Oh, I was just saying in previous editions they called it legacy weapons.
Hmm.
Either they well in 3.5 specifically, like at base leveled as you leveled, so it would well as you're unlocking stuff as a player, as a character, a class, the weapon would also be unlocking stuff as a weapon. So it's basically like a
Hmm.
weapon class. That's what they did in the third edition.
You know what's funny about that is this kind of like moving a little bit away from magic, but they talked not too long ago. Who's the main guy, the main D&D guy?
Chris Perkins?
Jeremy Crawford.
Yeah, him. Uh, I believe there was an interview where they were talking about like what new stuff they wanted to do with backgrounds going
Mhm.
forward, and how they wanted to have like feats tied to backgrounds, where there'll be a specific feat, and starting off it does one thing, and if you choose to continue having that feat as you
Mhm.
level, then it will continue to like gain extra features or get a little bit stronger. It's like I forget what they called it, but kind
Like
of
a
that
progression.
similar
Yeah.
idea where I think they are like with some things actually looking to implement that as like an
Mhm.
official thing in some ways. So
And
maybe they'll do that with magic items and stuff like that too.
I think a lot of the artifact level magic items um, do some of that as well. That they kind of grow with the character under certain conditions and stuff like that.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think that part's pretty neat. Aside from that, there's some other things in there. I don't want to get back up on my minor major soapbox again because we've kind of already covered that. That's where we spun off from. Um, I respect the system. I just don't like it. But there's some other things that come into consideration with a magic item. So your character comes into contact and they have an item that is potentially um, a magic item. Like, how do they know? There's some systems in place for that for the game. Um, one of which is the identify spell. That's what the identify spell is for, is to identify magic items. Um, and I will say is two is what's also neat about identify spell. And this is buried in the books, which is fun. But identify doesn't reveal a cursed weapon either. So that's where you can have some fun. We'll talk about curses later on, but you can use identify, and I think there's also the basic rule of basically if you take a short rest with that item, you spend an hour messing with it, then you basically identify it for
Would
free.
would revealing a curse be something that a cleric would have to do, or somebody with the cleric spell list?
I think a bard gets
Um,
the spell.
Legend
Legend
lore.
lore.
Legend
hmm
lore? Oh, okay. I
Yeah.
didn't know if it was like a detect evil or something.
I don't know. I mean, it can be a creative use depending, but legend. I think what legend lore is for.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe. Yeah, it's possible you could use detect alignment on an object if it's like an evil
If there's
weapon
like
that has
an
the soul of the demon in it.
inhabiting
Like,
it or something, like
Detect alignment. Yeah, to 3.5 moves.
sorry, detect good and evil. Sorry. Sorry. My whole life was 3.5. So
yeah, no worries, man.
I
No
like
worries.
hearing about some of the stuff that were in older versions of D&D because I'm not familiar at all. The only
oh
stuff
my
I'm
god,
aware of is from 5e.
Mhm.
three
So
3.5 went freaking hard on magic items. Like you had a slot for everything. You had a shirt, but then you can also wear armor over your shirt. And then there's vests and cloaks and then bracers and rings and like you name it, like every slot had a thing. So you could be super tricked out in 3.5. And all of it had monetary value. So like third edition went super hard on power fantasy. If you want to gear yourself out from head to toe, you can. And then I think fifth edition was like, all right, maybe we need to kick this back because so transitioning for me, because me and my friends played 3.5 for so long, even though when fifth edition was going, we tried because we tried fifth edition, we're like, yeah, we don't like it. We're gonna go back to 3.5 because we spent so much time cultivating our own homebrew campaign setting. But then we're like, all right, let's finally play fifth edition. So the transition from us from going to high magic, high power fantasy stuff to fifth edition, where it's like low magic items are not readily available for you to purchase. You have to find them, or the DM has to give them to you. So we struggled really hard of trying to find the right balance. I think we finally figured it out, but yeah, it was yeah, 3.5 was like a wild time. Like
You bring
was
up
it that
some.
hard to get magical items in the the beginning of 5th edition?
So there's a couple things that I'm glad that you brought up that I wanted to cover. So in fifth edition, it's based on like the DMG that magic items are supposed to be like scarce, supposed to be rare, and that in the DMG it says they're not available for purchase. Like you just can't go buy magic items. In Xanathars, they added rules for buying and selling magic items. So if you remember in campaign 1, with Yorlis as your sort of
Mhm.
magic item dealer, that's something that I kind of took from Xanathars, is that you have to go through basically a broker who knows people, who takes a finder's fee, that kind of stuff that has to like, and you have to do some rolls on it. I honestly I like that better. I think it makes magic items feel a little more special than just going to the shop and buying whatever you want off the shelves. That's kind of how 5th edition is different than 3.5 in that regard, is that you just can't walk in and just buy them.
Yeah,
So
the general goods store is not gonna have
Yeah, yeah.
high-powered
yeah,
magic items.
yeah, and that's where a lot of the downtime stuff comes in, like buying magic items, selling magic items, like creating, like crafting them. Or I know that you said in the chat earlier, Zeus, the research downtime activity, which allows you to research to see where could I find some of these objects in the world, which is super cool to do. Of like, hey, I want to find this really cool sword that is only in legend. You spend a little time on research, and then you find out, oh, it was in these ruins. Like that's how that stuff could play out. So there's ways to do it, but I like that it's just not, I go to the store and buy a magic item.
Mhm.
And then the
It's
second thing, oh, go ahead before I go
no,
on.
no, I don't want to. You're going to a second point.
The second point that I was going to bring up too is, aside from buying and selling, you mentioned being like tricked out in magic items, and
Yeah.
that's why 5th edition brought in attunement, which is a sort of, I think it's new. I don't know if any other edition had that off the top of my head. If they did, then I apologize. But the idea of attunement is certain magic items require you to attune. Basically, that's spending time with that item to basically bind it to you. You spend it over, I think, an hour. Same thing as trying to identify it. And then the idea of attunement is you can only be attuned 3 magic items at once. So that's the maximum. Unless you're an artificer, then you get more. Um, but yeah, that's to kind of help with that. I have all magic items all over, and I have like 10 items and 8, 5 rings and all that kind of shit.
Yeah.
I kinda like that personally. I mean, that's a staple in a lot of, like, video games where you only have so many slots for
Yeah.
stuff,
Hmm.
and if you get something new that you think is better, then you gotta figure out what piece of old equipment that you're gonna have to replace. I like that idea because it kind of like you said, it keeps you from just becoming a behemoth of power overall. Like with some
Yeah.
games that works, and that's fine,
Yeah.
but I feel
It's
like,
cool.
where you're building a character and you're following, like, I don't know, a storyline or whatever, it's like, oh, at the end of it, if you're just like, "No, I have everything, I'm super powered," it kinda takes away something from it.
Hmm.
It forces the player to really think what about their character and what items they want.
Yeah. Makes you make choices.
And then
Uh,
another thing is it's up to the DM too, like the DM's playstyle or the party, like session 0, like how powerful do you guys want? How much magic do you want? Like in another game I'm in, we have 4 attunement slots instead of 3, because we tend to run like more power creep, as you said.
mhm.
We like to be more stronger, but we are like higher level, like campaign 1, we're like level 12. So the DM wants to give us more powerful items because he likes to throw bigger and heavier stuff at us because
Mhm.
he likes to try to kill us.
See, that's cool because I think pretty soon we're gonna be talking about, like, high level, high powered D&D. I think that's one of the topics on the table, so that'll be interesting. I feel like that's something not many people get into maybe. Not a lot of campaigns do high level.
Maybe
I've
just need to
never
leave in
seen,
that
like, a super
conversation.
high level, so I'm interested in, like, hearing more about that, but
Mhm.
Zeus
yeah.
says 4th edition had attunement, but
Okay.
you got
I
more
played
slots as you leveled.
I played a little bit of 4th edition, but 5th edition is by far the one I've most played. But that's
Of
attunement
Stronghold?
anyway. You can only attune to one type of thing, so you can't have like,
Yeah,
if
not
you buy multiple rings, you can't attune if they're all the same kind of thing.
yeah, because you can wear 3 rings if you want, but you have to attune to all 3 of them.
If yeah, and it's another thing to say too is not all magic items require attunement either. And then in the DMG, it says that doesn't have specific like slots for like magic items. It just says like whatever makes sense with you in the DM. Like they have categories like weapons, armor, all kinds of that other stuff. I think there's like weapons, wands, wondrous items, which is basically like just the everything else category. But
Yeah.
it's whatever makes sense. You can't wear like 3 shirts,
Yeah.
that kind of stuff.
Listen, I've seen videos where people put 30 shirts on, okay?
They're walking around like that kid from the Christmas Story when he's like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
now how much
Amazing.
AC would that add?
Negative
I would
because you
I
can't
would
move.
yeah, but you would
But
get
you're extra
resistance.
padded.
Yeah, you get resistance
I don't know.
and make sure to follow the stronghold.
Appreciate it.
And your allies get advantage on athletic rolls when they're trying to roll you around.
You have disadvantage on all dexterity,
Yep.
saving throws, and
you have
ability
to
checks.
you have to use all of your movement speed to stand up.
Yeah.
It's a full action to stand up, and you have negative 20 movement.
Oh
Man.
man.
We just made a magic item. It's the shirt of many shirts.
Shirt of many shirts.
The suit of many layers.
Yeah.
Which we did as home. We like to give each other homework before every Tome of Knowledge, to do something, and we all gave each other homework to make our own magic items. And except for Max, he was.
Yeah, I didn't make one. I didn't come up with one in time.
It's okay. I made 3. I made 3
So,
magic items.
I will say if we're jumping over to creating magic items, and we're not talking about like crafting, we're talking about like making new ones that don't exist anywhere else. I think before we jump into this, I want to throw out some knowledge there since I didn't make one.
Okay.
A couple things. One, you don't have to create you said this in the beginning, you don't have to create your own magic items from scratch if you don't want to. There's plenty of magic items. If you're new and you don't want to do it, if you just look for something, it's out there, I promise. But if you do go into sort of diving into making your own magic items, for me, it's one of my weaknesses. For Moobs, he loves it and he can crank out magic items all day.
Oh yeah,
It's-
dude, it's my jam.
It's one of my weaknesses, but I'll say like what I've done in the past, because I worry about power creep and being, things not as balanced as they need to be. What I do is if I'm making a magic item, one, I'm just thinking, why am I making it in the first place? Is it because what I want doesn't exist? Is it important to the story? I'll go down that route. And then what I'll do is I'll think about how powerful I want it, and I'll look at other magic items. I'll look and see what they do, and I'll borrow or I'll do something similar. Or if this magic item granted this kind of spell, I'll make mine grant a different kind of one. There's plenty of ways to do it. I just cheat off the items that are already out there in the first place, for any ones that I make. So that's kind of what I do, is just check the power level, make sure that it makes sense, and then kind of go from there. So I think that's really the important thing. And I think there's specific rules in the DMG. I'll look for that while you're talking about the stuff that you made, though.
Well, I guess I can ask you, because you made magic items for our characters in campaign 1.
That's true.
What was your process of making the Herald's Tabard?
All right, let me remember what that did.
It
I don't have
can
a character sheet anymore.
it absorbed. I could basically negate a hit as a reaction. So if like it was a super BB hit, it negated all damage, all type damage.
I think if I remember correctly, I think what I did in that specific scenario is I wanted something cool to drop from the enemy that you defeated to get that was meaningful to your character. But I think in that specific case, I straight up lifted an epic boon and put it on a magic item instead of just inheriting it as a player as an epic boon. It was part of the magic item. So kind of that beg, borrow, steal that I was talking about earlier. I think that's how I made that anyway. I think that's one of the epic boons.
Oh man, Ron had an epic boon.
Y'all had a lot of shit.
You did. I was
I'm
so
gonna
mad
look.
he gave VS the Holy Avenger though.
Yeah, it was so funny because we had this plan for VS's weapon depending on which direction he went and how the campaign went. I don't want to get too deep into that for anybody who hasn't seen the first campaign, and there's discussions for that type of stuff, but I know that you as a paladin, like, I want Holy Avenger, I want Holy Avenger, and I felt so bad because that was already the plan and one of the, like the paths that Falcon could take for his weapon. There were some changes to it though. There were a little bit of tweaks on it, but it was that as a base for sure.
All right. Well, since we always make VS go first, I'll start. Since I have 3 items, I'll do 1 and then we'll
Sure.
go to VS. And then of course, if there's any questions in chat pertaining to item creation or just how to deal with magic items in general for a campaign, can Bucket have a magic item? Bun has a question already and say yes.
Can Bucket have a magic item? Say yes.
Okay.
Only if it's a knife or a cigarette.
The crab mean with the knife.
The
Yes.
crab meme, yes. That's Bucket's a crab.
So I made 3 items. And one was like pretty simple. And the second one was more involved. And then I made a third one like as a iterative thing. Like this is what you could do with item. This is how you can make it more OP, and this is how you can make it a cursed item. So I'll start with the first item I made. It's called the Blink Shield, the +1 shield. And I just arbitrarily added how many usage a day. So it's like 2 per long rest. It resets upon reset upon a long rest. But
Mhm.
the wielder can use the reaction, and the shield will blink to an ally that you see within 30 feet, um, and add a shield bonus of +3. So it's like an activatable mini shield for the tank or whoever's wielding the shield. And then after the reaction, the ally gets +3 shield bonus, and then it blinks back to the wielder.
That's really fucking cool, actually. Because when you said blink shield, I was thinking like taking like what blink dogs
Yeah.
do, or like the isn't there a spell that does that? Is it called blink? Am I losing my mind
Yeah.
here?
Blink dogs, the spell blink.
But
But I
no,
flavored it with the blink dog type effect where the shield blinks
yeah,
to an ally and then gives you like a mini shield, like the spell shield, which
that's
gives
super
you
cool.
+5, but this gives you +3, and you could do it twice a day or per long rest.
Yeah, that's cool.
I didn't go into the nuance of if it's a major, uncommon, rare. It sounds like a rare item. It's
Yeah,
+1, and it gives you a cool mini shield ability that you can use for your allies.
and I think twice a day is a reasonable amount of uses. I tend For me, I tend to either do like once a day or once a short rest or like D4 uses per day. That's all I've seen each different variations of that on different items.
Yeah. Charges seem to be the one. And then if you expend all some of the themes that some magic item has, if you expend all charges, there's a chance the magic item can break. Which is like okay, so it makes players kind of have to like manage how many uses they have left.
Mhm.
But that's my blink shield.
I think that's really cool. Now I can't make my own blink shield since you already made one.
You, you can take it. It's fine.
Just messing with you.
Anyone listening or watching can adopt it into their campaign. All right, VS.
Okay. I call this one Ida's Incredible Elixir Bottle. I wasn't sure on the rarity because I don't know if this is strong or weak, but what it does is it's a small crystal bottle that's enchanted. And once per day, it has a chance to fill with a red healing elixir of varying strength. How it works is the player who has the bottle once a day can roll a d100, and based on what they roll, determines the strength of the potion. So,
Hmm.
but it's there is a chance that it doesn't fill at all. So From 1 to 9, it doesn't fill. 10 to 49, you get the equivalent of a potion of healing. 50 to 74, you get the equivalent of a greater. 75 to 99, the equivalent of a superior. And if you happen to land on 100 for that day, you have access to a supreme level healing potion. If you don't use the potion, at the end of the day, it disappears from the bottle. You have to roll again and get a refill. And so if you happen to roll the supreme and don't use it, well, you
lose
you
it.
have to roll something else. Yeah.
I like that. That's super cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. Y'all are way better at this than I am.
Like I said, I don't know in terms of gameplay. I once per day to have a chance at like there's a lot higher chance that you're gonna roll like a normal healing and then slightly smaller for the better ones. I feel like it's not too strong. It's only one use. It could
Mhm.
be a later game item. I don't know.
Is it one use and it's gone, or is like once a day? It's always
It's
something
like
different.
it's once per day will grant you one use of whatever strength you get. Or if you get really unlucky and roll 1 to 9, it doesn't fill at all.
Mhm.
I like the item a lot. That's pretty. That's a lot. There's a lot of flavor. There's a lot of mechanics that went into it because it's using a D100 percentage. Yeah, it's a
Mhm.
fun item.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would probably put that. I think because the ability to get those super high level potions, I'd probably put it at rare.
Yeah.
Maybe very rare, but rare seems fitting.
And yeah, that's kind of what I was getting at, Zeus, is like if you don't use it, then you the person who has it, you might as well roll every day
Yeah.
for I expect them to roll at every long rest, sleep time, or whatever, or the next morning or whatever. Because why not? I mean, that's potentially a free potion. Now, I don't know how you would go about a player finding something like that. Could be loot, could be, them gathering information. Maybe the person has an interest in, I don't know, alchemy or potions, and they heard rumors of a enchanted potion bottle or something.
Or a magical antiquity shop that has a chance of spawning for the players to procure obscure items.
Or that.
Mhm. Yep. Here, I'll make one up on the fly.
Yeah, let's go.
So I thought y'all were gonna do weapons, so you didn't do weapon. So I'll just say, um, it's gonna be on any one-handed weapon, and on a hit with said weapon, you can spend, I'll just say, some resource like bonus action, reaction, something like that. So it'll take more than just your action. On a hit, you can spend this, and it would allow you to basically get the same effect of a dispel magic on the creature that you hit. Give it X amount of charges per day, maybe. And then kind of go from there. Off the top of my head, just like scrolling through spells and looking at it. I don't know if that exists or not. It might already exist because it seems pretty obvious. But yeah, there's one. Let's just say I don't know, dagger of dispelling, what have you. You stab him with it. If you hit him, then you can spend a resource, and then you get to dispel. You know, at the third level or whatever.
I thought of something fun for our heavy weapon user friends.
Mm-hmm.
Could be, I don't know, gloves or gauntlets or something, but wearing it allows you to give one one weapon that has the heavy property of your choice. You can add the throwing property to that weapon as well.
That's amazing.
I mean, come on. Like a
That's
barbarian
amazing.
should be able to throw a great axe at somebody and not.
It's true. That is true. Yeah, they should.
That's awesome. Pair of gauntlets that I love
You
that.
can pick one and you can decide which heavy weapon per day, and you can basically give that the thrown property.
Mm-hmm.
See, yeah, another awesome item. I
I
also
would have
made
a
a
lot of
weapon.
fun with that. I'd just chuck a great sword at somebody.
Yeah, that's great. And hilarious.
Mhm.
I made it could be any weapon, but I chose a longsword. I call it the longsword of the void chain. It's a +2, so it's a very powerful weapon. I would say it's maybe probably was it legendary? I don't know. +2, and then at will, as a bonus action, you can grant this weapon the reach property. So your weapon has reach, and it does a D4 force damage. And then once per long rest, as a standard action, you stab your sword into the ground, and an enemy that you see within 30 feet must make a dex save or be restrained by these void chains. And then at the end of his turn, it can make a strength or dex, its choice, to break free. But if and then as a bonus action, if your target is restrained, the chains constrict and deal 2d8 force damage. Um, but while this sword is in the ground, you don't have a weapon anymore. You don't have access to it, and then you can choose to either they break free and the sword is back to normal use, or you just pull it out of the ground and you can start wielding the sword again.
That's really cool too.
Mhm.
You can do it for any weapon, two handed, whatever, doesn't matter.
Hmm.
My flavor is longsword.
Dude,
I like
hearing
it.
these gives me all kinds of ideas.
I'm jealous. I'm not good at this. Y'all are way better at this than I am. But I don't want to. I
Uh,
don't want to consult y'all on weapons that you're going to get either. That doesn't seem very fun.
what
Well, I
about
guess if you did it in max brain mode, it's like the Eldritch tattoo where it gives you reach and you do
Hmm.
d6 force damage, and then so now
Yeah.
I'm adopting the black tentacle spell as a
Hmm.
weapon ability.
Yeah. Nice. Very nice.
And then I have my so it's I chose a weapon, no, like an armor material. So you craft this into anything that you want, but it's catered to moon druids. So I call it lycanthrope hide. And then if you can obtain this hide, you can craft it into like hide armor, leather armor, hey Dodie, or whatever, any leather type armor, studded leather. So for a case of the druid, while they're wild shaped, they get an additional +2 to natural armor to whatever existing they're getting from
Ah.
whatever form they're capturing. And then I took it to a next level where while wild shaped, you are resistant to slashing, piercing, and bludgeoning, so, non-magical. So if they have
Hmm.
magic damage, it overrides the resistance. And then if you want to take it to the next level to make it even more crazier, that it gives the druid the ability to hybrid wild shape. So they kind of turn into a lycanthropy form, like a werebear, werewolf, were rat, whatever their flavor of were form they want to be, and
Hmm.
that would give them advantage on strength and dex checks, and also +10 to their movement speed. And I took it
Nice.
a next step to make it a cursed item.
Hmm.
So after each use of hybrid wild shape, the wearer must make a wisdom save DC 15, and I arbitrarily chose DC 15 because of how many. Seems really powerful if you're adding all these things.
Hmm.
Um, and if they fail the wisdom save, they get a lycanthropy point. And if they get to 3 points, so they fail 3 times, uh, they permanently have the lycanthropy curse, and then
So
they have to go through the stuff to
yeah,
get rid of it.
do those points, are they stacked up forever? They never reduce down?
I made it where the points would reset after a full moon, so you would have to wait a month.
Ah, interesting. Interesting. Also, if they were using that and you said that they are resistant to piercing, bludgeoning, and slashing, non-magical, would you still allow the silvered weapons to work the same way as they do with lycanthropes now?
I would say so, because you're using
Seems
the
thematic,
skin
yeah.
of a lycanthropy, yeah. So that was my super crazy item that has tier diff to go as like so you could go as crazy as you want or as simple as you want, where you
Hmm.
can just have it +2 AC while wild shape, you know?
Hmm.
Hmm. Seems like one that could just grow with the character too. They keep
Yeah.
unlocking stuff with it, and then find out it's cursed.
And then they become a permanent were giraffe or whatever form they like.
Where's your
And
Oh
then I
man.
also put a sub note if you're a shifter, you would get advantage on these rolls because you kind of have that lycanthropy bloodline thing going.
I like it. I need to start rethinking like how to make magic items. And those are really unique.
What if
Ah,
applied to anyone wearing it under the effects of transmutation spell or effect like wild shape polymorph and alter self? I think it would work with polymorph.
thought of another fun one for our either fighter or maybe paladin or barbarian. Uh, Basically a maul, right?
Mhm.
Or
I like moles.
that's the yeah. Call it the hammer of the earth mover, where you can a number of times. I think trying to think what would be best. Equal to your proficiency modifier. You can use your bonus action to strike the ground with the maul, allowing you to create a 15-foot cone out in front of you. An enemy caught within it has to make a dex save, or they take some number of dice bludgeoning damage, and the area where that cone was now becomes rough terrain
Perfect.
for the
Yeah.
remainder of the combat.
I
You
like
could
that.
even make it to where that they
Or you can make it 30 feet and get wild. I don't know.
no, because when he thought slamming the ground, I was like, I was gonna make that difficult terrain, isn't he? You could also make it where they have to make a check to not fall prone.
Oh, yep.
So you could make it
Yeah, they
like
can
a
fall prone and take full damage if they fail to save.
yeah. So instead of a bonus action, you could make it like a full action, like an alternate full action,
Hmm.
to because it has range to it now as a barbarian. So you slam your
Yeah,
hammer to the ground, they
bonus might be too strong.
take damage half as much on a save, and if they don't save, they fall prone. Yeah, that'd be pretty gnarly.
Yeah, like the basically you're imbuing or yeah, you're taking all your strength and imbuing it through the maul, and you can have it. I don't know. You can the DM can give it any kind of flavor. Say it glows, or it gets shards of rock that grow around it before it hits the ground, or however you want to do it. But I
Hmm.
think that would be a fun one. Allowing it gives the melee user some form of like uh, control, like CC that they might
Yeah,
not normally have. Where you can where mostly it's a caster that could do something like that. This gives the potential for a little bit of tactical play for the melee user
I think it's a
that's
cool
using that
idea
weapon.
for sure. A nice fun usage.
Hmm.
And if you want to try your hand at like creating your own magic items, for those that are listening, the DMG has a specific like creating a new item, and then kind of walk you through like, hey, if you're giving this item a spell, like if you want it to be rare, it has to be this level spell or below, or like if it like a
Mhm.
sword, like what you were saying, like a +3, like if it's +3, that automatically makes it very rare, on the scale of magic item power. So yeah, it has a little bit of guidance there. Not a whole lot, but it has some. But also it talks about, you can combine magic items together. You can switch stuff out, like, you know, if I think the one they have in the book too is if you have a paladin who and you want to give them Holy Avenger, but they don't use a sword, they use like a flail instead, then just make it a flail. Like it's fine.
Yeah.
Or, if someone because I think one thing that I did with one of Bun's weapons from the first campaign is just give it some effects and then change the type of damage that it does. Like if it was originally supposed to do fire, make it do lightning, make it do poison, something like that. Changing those damage types doesn't really affect a whole lot, to be honest, unless it's force damage, because I don't think anything resists force damage. So
Mm-hmm. Force
I think
is
force
OP.
and radiant, yeah, are the top two that are least resisted.
Now that they are adding the guns, they're adding the guns to the player's handbook, right? Or the
Yeah, for the one D&D playtest stuff. Yeah,
I think it'd be kind of funny if there was a magic gun that was like, I don't know, combat combat medics experimental pistol, where you can, as a bonus action, change the ammunition and give it healing properties so that you can shoot a teammate with it and give them the benefit of like a healing kit, or like what Bun did for us in the first campaign with the
Mhm.
tonics. It's just like, maybe it's like very limited, like 3 times per long rest or something, but
See, that's a really cool idea that you can come up with, where because you're thinking of that, and when you say a gun of healing, I'm thinking like, well, that could be just a wand of healing, of like, is it healing word, like I'm making a wand of healing word.
yeah,
But then you just kind of take that idea and run with it of like, oh, well, if I have a wand of healing word, and then I have like a wand of, I'll just say magic missile for just the first thing that popped in my mind. Yeah, oh, combine those two, flavor it as a gun based on like what VS says, and then make it, an action or bonus action, whatever, to switch the ammunition that you're using.
Mhm.
So that's, yeah, flavor stuff however you want. I think that could be really cool too.
I just I just like the idea of like somebody carrying around this pistol and having a hurt teammate and just going
Yeah, and it's
and
not going to
healing them.
break anything because it's, I mean,
No.
yeah.
there's plenty of ranged healing spells. So
Yeah. Again, another way for maybe like a non-magic user to have an effect similar to a spell.
Yeah, because there's already magical ammunition in Dungeons and Dragons, so why not with gun ammunition with the bullets?
Mhm.
So it
yeah,
totally makes sense. Totally works.
I'm thinking about a character that could do that.
The healing gunslinger.
and I think about too, and the way that I like to treat like the firearms in D&D, this that I picked up from one of my previous DMs, is things that work with crossbows, just make them work with guns too, like feats related to crossbows, make them work like they do with guns, that kind of stuff. Ammunition, make it work the same way. If there's magic ammunition for one thing, like you said, make it to where it works with guns too. Because I think
Yeah,
that it depends on like your fantasy world, like where you're in. But I think in both of the ones that I've had, firearms are available of like your sort of, you know, musket type situation, flintlock, all that kind of stuff.
I know there's some cool stuff with not necessarily like ammunition related or whatnot, but just I think it's Unearthed Arcana for an artificer. There's a spell that if they can use a bonus action to change to give the weapon another d6 damage, but of an element of their choice.
That's
And they have
cool.
to use a bonus action to change the element to a
Hmm.
different element. But basically, yeah, you just get like an extra d6 of damage, and it's you pick the element,
Hmm.
fire, ice, whatever. Like things like
Yeah.
that, I always think are super cool. I wish it was like not in the Unearthed Arcana, but it was like,
A lot of fun stuff never made it out of
yeah.
yeah.
Unearthed Arcana. Yeah.
'Cause I was looking at like Artificer Initiative. I was like, ooh, let me see the Artificer spells. Oh, it's not there.
Hmm. I think I just thought about this too, relating it to campaign too. So kind of case in point, like with Hayden has like a hand crossbow, right?
Mhm.
In my eyes, anything you can do with a hand crossbow, you can do it with a pistol. In my game world. So if you happen to find a pistol and then get like a crossbow expert feat or something like that, that would still work with the pistol. Makes sense to me anyway.
Yeah, I think Hayden would use a pistol.
I mean, yeah,
I
y'all a bunch
mean,
of scallywags. Makes
yeah,
sense.
exactly. Gotta have.
I mean,
Well, we
I'm
did have a couple in campaign one.
stealth be damned, I guess.
Yeah, y'all found a whole cache of stuff and never really used it because it
We
wasn't,
did.
none of your characters really, fit with them.
I do need to find like an armor and have some new armor made. I feel like a squishy boy.
You're only
Right.
level 3, guys. You're only level 3.
Well, we're all
I have
squishy.
21 HP, man.
Yeah, we're super squish until Bun turns into a bear, and she's the tanky one.
Yep. I mean, that's pretty much your whole crew is pretty squishy, except for wild shaped Emmy.
Yeah,
Maybe
there's
maybe Emmy gets lycanthropy hide armor. I don't know.
Maybe Emmy gets a magic gun. I don't know.
Like a
Whatever y'all
that would
think.
be funny.
a werebear shooting magic pistols.
Shark with lasers, whatever you want. It's your
Yeah.
D&D campaign.
Ah,
But yeah. That's cool. Zeus, a fighter build in 5e with hand crossbow expertise, sharpshooter. We nicknamed the Desert Eagle.
Isn't
Yeah.
that essentially like the optimal if ranged build?
Yeah, I think
And
so.
crossbow, sharpshooter,
Hmm. Yeah.
for now.
A lot of feats.
Hmm.
For now.
But yeah,
Until
go ahead.
I was gonna say until sharpshooter goes away.
Oh, yeah, that's right. They're changing those.
Yeah, they're getting rid of the -5 +10.
Hmm.
They're so good though.
It's yeah, I mean, they're nice boosts.
Well, I know we
I
said we
will.
were gonna make an item together, but we kind of just made
We
a
went
bunch
ham. Yeah,
rapid
I don't
fire.
think we
Yeah,
need to now, but
yeah, we're good.
I will say too, from like the DM perspective of like when to dole out magic items and like how many and stuff like that. Um, what I usually do is you've got like in the DMG, it has sections of like how to give out treasure and stuff, and it has like the treasure hoard like tables. One of the things that I do, which was taught to me when I was a baby dungeon master, is for like a story arc or like a specific mission or like a quest, you can roll on that treasure hoard table, and then whatever you get out of it, you can just sprinkle those items all the way through that entire quest of like drops and pickups and stuff like that. So I think, for example, in campaign 1, when y'all were in that large mansion trapped, I'm pretty sure that because I knew it was going to be a multi episode adventure type thing, is just like rolling on the treasure hoard table for your appropriate level, you know, separate things, put some things in this room, some things in this room, some things over here. I think it's really easy to do it, to use it as like a adventure arc. Take that and then break it all up. It's much easier than trying to think of treasure for like each specific like encounter unless it makes sense for your story. I think that makes sense. So just, you know, trust the rolls, roll out the magic items. You know, if you want to do something specific, toss those in there too. But that's kind of how I do it to make it easier for me anyway.
Yeah. Speaking of
Is it?
easier, I used to do like there's random loot generator websites where you can
Mm-hmm.
put in the CR of the combat and it'll just poop out loot for you. So if you
Mm-hmm.
want to get super lazy, it helps. It speeds up time a lot.
Oh yeah, I I find an online generator for the treasure hoard table and I click roll and I go, that looks good.
Yeah, and then you can
Or
pick and choose like, "Oh, we won't do that. We could re-roll it," or, "Yeah, that looks
yeah,
cool," you know?
that's what I do. I was like, like a painting doesn't make sense to be here, but what else could I put in there as opposed to an art object or whatever?
You know what I think would be a really fun encounter, or multiple encounters throughout a campaign is, I, for those that have played like any of the past Final Fantasy games or any, I guess, JRPG. There's typically a creature that's like a literal loot pinata that has like a ton of money on them, or items, or experience points, and they're usually like a rare occurrence in a normal fight. They might show up, and they're really hard to hit, and if you don't do enough damage fast enough, they run away.
Like a loot goblin.
Yeah,
Yeah.
essentially, some form of that. Having something like that as like a reoccurring thing in the campaign where there's like the party comes across a little creature that has like an enormous sack of goods and having the party chase them down only to lose them. And then 2 levels down the road, they see it again and it's got an even bigger bag.
Mhm.
Just making a game out of can they actually hit this thing and do enough damage to kill it and then get the bag.
I think you have to be careful in some of those scenarios too, because the more times it gets away, the more it's going to suck for your players, and they're not going to like it anymore. Because they'll know that they're missing out on items, kind of
They
thing.
don't know
Yeah.
what's in that bag.
But
I
yeah,
mean, it's
that's
a good.
It could just be
I
a
was,
bag of cheese.
sure.
people love cheese. I was saying that's a good excuse to use a skill challenge. Turn into a skill
Mhm.
challenge,
My favorite. My favorite.
or the players aren't paying attention, and then they end up somewhere they're not supposed to be, and they're like in big trouble.
Mhm.
Or if you want to get really devious and you got like a reasonable table that's not going to get upset. If somebody on watch doesn't roll high enough, then a creature comes and pilfers a random item
Gotta be
or
careful.
random items.
Yep, that's a fast way to piss people off.
Gotta be careful. It could if it leans into the story and they have opportunities to get it back, absolutely.
Well, yeah, like I would not. If
Mhm.
something like that happens, it would be literally the next morning they would find its tracks and then
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
That's a
yeah,
fun little side quest type thing.
yeah.
A good point from the chat too, saying that when you use your treasure hoard and it spits out items, make some of the bad guys along the way use said items.
oh
That
yeah.
makes it more immersive. So if there's like a badass, I'll just throw out like a wand of fireballs or whatever, make somebody use that against them. Because then I think it'll feel that much better when the party takes it from them.
That's usually the most rewarding is when you kill a baddie and take their loot that
Mm-hmm.
they used against you, and you're like, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. I
Yeah.
think that's pretty good. That's magic items pretty much.
In a nutshell.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any other
Those
things? Any other questions you might have, VS, coming in from the player angle before we wrap it up?
I mean, I learned a lot more about how these things work, how to go about choosing items to give out, and
Mm-hmm.
you know what is possible with the items. Yeah, it's cool. I don't
Nice.
think
Only
I have anything
limited
else.
by your imagination.
Yeah, and y'all's imagination's great. So anyway, thanks everybody for watching and hanging out with us. That was magic items. Tomorrow 7 p.m. is going to be an art stream with Bunny and Dreadful, and then of course on Thursdays or Out of Combat will drop on podcast and YouTube. There's a link to YouTube right now in the chat if you're listening live, or it's in the description. So go check out our YouTube. We're getting much closer to the number of watch hours we need to get partnered over there. So it'd really mean the world to us if you go check it out and watch a couple things. And then of course episode 7 will be on Friday, 6 p.m. Pacific. So thanks
Can't
everybody
wait.
for thanks everybody for watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye everybody.
Take care. See ya.
See ya.